Tensions between the provinces and the federal government over pipeline politics and the carbon tax have dominated the headlines in recent weeks. Here to discuss all of that and more, Manitoba Premier Brian Pallister joins me here in studio. You're in Ottawa, here to talk to the federal government. Had a chance to have meetings, I understand, on everything from environment to Indigenous children in care. How is your relationship right now with the federal Liberals?
Well, I'd say it's quite good. You know, we're one of the few governments in Canada that isn't very closely aligned with the federal government in a direct sense politically, but by that I don't think that gets in the way of a good relationship based on being forthright with each other. And I am very forthright with the Prime Minister and my ministers with the federal ministers, and we've had some real successes actually in terms of partnering on housing, some great stuff on ag policy. We've got some infrastructure projects underway. So it's working pretty well. We have our disagreements as well, obviously. The healthcare transfers
Absolutely.
thing.
Carbon tax, and you want your own essentially provincial plan on that. Are you getting any sense that the federal government is perhaps reconsidering their position, or are they still going to refuse to give you money?
Well, no, they're going to partner with us on some environmental projects. I think the source of concern is that we have a flat plan, and they have an escalating plan, kind of a boil the frog way to change people's minds, which we don't think will work well. So we've got
Why not?
Well, because it doesn't change habits. You know, we have a Made in Manitoba strategy we developed after consulting with her extensively across the province with a vast array of groups, and they said, you know, let's just bite the bullet, have it at 25, make it flat so it's predictable. It'll work better to change attitudes and habits, and it will work better for our economy because it is predictable.
So why does the federal government disagree with you on that?
Well, you'd have to ask them, because our models show that our plan will work better, and if it's about power, I guess they'll want to take us to court someday.
Are you willing to go to court with them?
We have to, but I don't think there's any doubt that they'll be getting advice that they won't win. So we know, because we got the constitutional advice, Mercedes, that they did have the power to invoke a plan on us, and we realized that if we just said no, we'd get Trudeau. We'd get $1 billion taken out of Manitoba with no certainty as to how to be used. So we decided to have our own plan, flat, like the Prairie Horizon, but at the same time, with the money going back into lower taxes, totally. Plus, we have to lower our taxes because they went up so much under the previous NDP administration. It had been hurting our economic performance. So what Manitobans are telling us they like about our plan is that it protects the environment, it does the job that we need to do. And Manitoba, as you know, is one of the greenest jurisdictions in the country. But it also protects our economic progress by making the levy predictable and certain.
Well, speaking of economic progress, let's talk about pipelines.
Okay.
You know, this
or
is
lack thereof.
Lack thereof.
Yeah.
Is the federal government doing enough to get Canada's natural resources out to foreign markets?
That's obviously an issue of some concern and debate, and there are differing views on that front. I would say that premiers have a role here. Right since and long before the Macdonald Commission, 1984, said, you know, let's build our Canadian economic family. Let's reduce interprovincial barriers to trade. And for many years since, we haven't made much progress. There's been lots of talk, but not a lot of action. Now we see struggles over beer, struggles over pipelines, and we know that our economic progress depends on trading with one another better, and yet we have all these barriers. So last year, the premiers agreed to an interprovincial barrier reduction strategy, and we now have 23 different tables with bureaucrats at them working on things like better coordination of regulation, better ag and transportation policies, many other files.
So did BC and Alberta just miss those meetings?
Apparently, yeah, because, well, of course, this is a source of conflict, but we have reasons to have unity because we're all in this together. We are a family, after all. So what I'm advocating here is that we move this item, reducing interprovincial trade barriers, to the top of the agenda at our next premiers meeting. And I'll be approaching all the other premiers on that front because I believe this is essential. We're talking about by the last study I read, $28 billion of additional GDP that we're missing out on because of interprovincial barriers to trade. We can trade better with other G7 countries than we can with one another. That is wrong.
What can the Prime Minister do, though, to advance that? Because at some point that becomes a national interest issue, and I think that's the question with the pipeline. Is he doing enough personally?
Well, I don't think I'm going to choose to blame the Prime Minister here. I think he's very preoccupied right now with trying to remedy this issue, you know, the pipeline issue. He's also, and Minister Freeland, obviously very focused on the NAFTA discussions. But what I struggle with is that there's a bit of incongruity here. We're all about free trade with Mexico and the United States, and we're wisely pursuing trade relationships with other countries and with other regions of the world. Good, we know we benefit from that. But we've got to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. What about the domestic barriers to trade?
Okay.
Those need to be eliminated. And you know, we're talking the game of free trade, but we're not landing the plane here in Canada.
Now,
and we need to do a better job of that.
Of movement, we just have a few seconds left, but I have to ask you, of course, about immigration, because it's been a huge issue, irregular immigration across the Manitoba border, something that could spike again this summer. Are you satisfied with the federal government's handling of that file? They're saying we're putting a lot of resources on the front lines to process people coming across, but you're the province and Quebec are the two big provinces that are receiving all of these irregular migrants.
Quite frankly, I was not at all impressed early, because I felt that this was putting into disrepute our system, our beautiful reputation as a country of being open and the home of hope for people from around the world, legitimate refugees. I was not at all impressed. I am much more impressed by the minister's conduct, his proactivity in recent months, his willingness to listen and work with us in Manitoba, and I know with other provinces. So I would not want to say anything that was critical of the minister. But we had to incur last year many, many additional costs, and I expect the federal government to step up and assist Manitoba, as they are doing with other provinces as well.
Other jurisdictions. Okay, well, we have to wrap it up there. We're out of time, but thank you very much for joining us for your time in Ottawa here, Premier.
My pleasure. Thanks so much.